Greetings, welcome to Posaments. I'm Erin, or otherwise known in the SCA or Society for Creative Anachronisms as aldgytha. Hey, you works fine. So today we're going to go over how to make posaments. And let's see, I do have a handout that is up in the February group. And I will actually try and go through and add comments for my handouts on the actual YouTube posts once I, get around to it. Because of course we all have, copious amounts of spare time. Hang on just a sec. I'm going to spotlight myself real quick. Okay. So I've spotlighted myself, so hopefully you'll still be able to see me and stuff. So I have the handout up. Mostly this is to help you after class, because I find that it's things that make sense sometimes, especially in fiber classes. You go home, you set up, or you finish the class, you set it aside, and then you go back to look at it and you're going, oh gosh, what was that again? So it's not really meant as it hopefully would actually work as a standalone. But hopefully this is just to refresh your memory on how things are done. Okay, so if you have any questions at all, I can be contacted via the February group. I'm in there under Erin A. Aldgytha. If you send me a friend request, it is easier if I know that you just took my class and that I have met you, because I actually really don't accept friend requests from anybody. I've never understood the whole need to be friends with complete strangers, but we're not complete strangers if you've had one of my classes, because if nothing else, I want you to be easily able to reach me and ask any questions you have. My email is aldgytha@earthlink.net. Aldgytha is ALDGYTHA. Okay, so that said, if you have problems, contact me. If you make something cool, send me a picture. I love that. It's one of my favorite things in the universe. Okay, so posaments are generally found in Sweden. In fact, I don't know if there's any examples that are found outside of Sweden.
Erin, can you just define what a posament is?
They're a combination. Some of them are knotted metallic threads. Some of them are actually, let me grab these real quick. Some of them are actually wire. So this is a very, very large version. And because the actual real one is about the size of a quarter. And then there's different types of metal braids. So basically these are embellishment. Okay, most likely on clothing. There's some speculation that these, they tend to be found mostly on male garments. And the largest collection of posaments that we have is from 9th century burqa in Sweden. But we do have a few other examples, such as a piece from like Gotland, and then there's a few other places. But as far as I know, all of them were found in various places in Sweden. There is some speculation that this could have been something done in pretty threads to pass the time, because most of the knots you see. So, I also have an expert here today on posaments, and who I will be mentioning her site as well. Oh, actually, she's posted a link to the posaments that are found outside of burqa, and actually her website is linked on my handout. But there is some speculation that a lot of these knots are similar to what you would find in maritime. Sailors use knots for various purposes, and many of these knots are the same as if you were in scouts of some form and you learned basic knots. anybody who's actually been in Scouts comes to my class and they're like, oh, that's a this knot. And I'm like, oh, is that what that's called? You know, but so I've included my handout pictures of cements, a link to the Swedish History Museum. There is a Posament group on Facebook. Some of your Posaments, there's actually wire deer that were done as decoration and sewn down on garments. Ethne is in the class right now from North Shield, and she has fantastic links to everything she could find Posament wise. She has a spreadsheet of them. She has a few tutorials up. I assume she probably plans on making more, but she got a little distracted with 2 bundles of joy. And she also has an Etsy shop at which she sells some materials. I actually get my materials through Pewter of Sweden because I buy it in bulk. Because Posaments are one of the things that I like to walk around at events and keep my hands busy with. And they're also one of those things that I just really enjoy giving to people so they can put them on their garb or something of that nature. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop share. This is the first knot that we are going to go over. And if you need to, you're welcome to pull up the handout on your computer too. I'm going to go ahead and stop share for the moment so you can actually focus on my showing you how to do the knot. Okay. So this is one of the knots found in grave 520 at Burka. I'm only going over some of the knots found at Burka today. If you do want to know other knots, I have played with some of them, but there's actually been more people who've actually played with some of the obscure ones on the Posament group on Facebook. Okay. So I am going to, so I actually tend to do Posaments in the air when I'm working with them, but I find that that's actually hard for most people to follow. So what I'm actually going to try and do is try and do this on a flat surface so you can actually see it. Okay, so if you have practice cord and want to play along, it needs just to be long enough that you can actually make something with it. I tend to go for longer cords just because I'm really good at untangling things. But so you want to have one cord. Here's my knotted ends, and you want it to just loop like this for the first one. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I didn't think about it, the fact that it was going to slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do is on this top one, actually, I'm going to reshare real quick. So on my top one, because I'm thinking of this as 2 strings, this is right here. This is if I had left it like this. So now I'm going to leave this top one alone, and I am going to make this, the bottom one, I'm going to form this loop. On these pictures, the part you need to pay attention to is what part is over and what part is under. Okay, so a principle of knots is that knots are basically a form of weaving in that they alternate over, under, over, under. And because if they don't, they will fall apart. Okay, so I'm actually going to probably try and do this upright first. Oh, actually, that might work. Okay, so here I have this, and what I'm going to do now is I am going to take this and I'm going to twist it, and then I'm going to lay it over. And actually, I'm going to turn it so it's the same direction as what you guys are looking at. Okay. Okay, there. Hopefully you can see that. Okay. So here, what I've got is, now I've just got, this is my bottom thread, and this part is over. Okay. If this part is not over, it means you twisted the loop the wrong way. So you just twist it back the original way and then continue again. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I've got my top thread laying in between underneath this loop. Okay, so I'm going to take the thread I have not used yet that didn't make the loop, and I'm going to cross it over the tail from the bottom loop or bottom string. Okay, and then I'm going to come up under this one. So if you notice, it was laying under this loop. So here it's under, now it's over. So my next move is going to be under this string.
I can't see the tail of your bottom portion. Like the camera can't see it.
That way?
The camera can't see the tail of it.
Oh. So what part can't you see?
Well, I can see more of the head of you and not the tail of your string.
Oh, I can see the whole thing.
I was just gonna say, I can see the whole thing as well.
Okay, because yeah, it's showing on my screen, it's showing the same thing. So I don't know. We can go back over it. The pictures, it basically what I'm doing here is the same thing as on the handout, really.
Okay, I'll figure it out then. We're good.
But if needed, you can stick around after and you and I can do one-on-one. I'm perfectly fine with that too.
I can see what she's talking about. Part of the tray is obscured. We can see like your chin, point the screen down more towards your boobs. There you go. That's
Okay,
it.
Can everybody see it now?
Perfect.
Yes. Now I can see the whole thing. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so I've now crossed under this one. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to come across diagonally, but I'm going to continue that alternating under, over, under, over. So the last time I went under, so now I'm going to go over this part of that part of the loop. Then I'm going to pick up that part that was hiding behind it. And then I'm going to pass over the outer edge of that loop. Okay, so this is what I've got. Okay. Okay, the bottom menu bar. So is the menu bar for Zoom blocking your screen? Okay, and then what you're going to do when it's kind of loose, tighten it gradually. If you just yank it tight, you are going to get a gobbledygook knot. If you didn't alternate over under, the cool thing is the knot will just fall apart and you know to start over. So now that I'm tightening it up, it looks a little bit more uniform. Okay, I'm going to leave these ones loose just because it's easier for you guys to see. But so that is the same as this. And if you notice, these ones are fairly tight. This is actually made out of tentrad, which is a metal wrapped around the silk core. Okay, so from here, I don't want to just do one. So I usually will tighten this up so I remove most of this excess loop over here, just because I don't want to waste anything. So I usually will remove that excess loop so it's, just kind of sitting on the top of the knot. So now to do another knot, I'm literally going to do the exact same thing. So I will form my loop and I will lay it on, and this part the tail needs to be over this string. Okay, and then I'm going to take my second or my top string, and I'm going to lay it over the bottom string, and then I'm going to come back under here. And then I'm going to, because I came under, I'm going to go over this one, pick up that string that was sitting behind the loop, and then cross over the other side of the loop. Okay. So does that make sense? And if it doesn't, do not be afraid to don't be afraid to say something, because I will repeat this as many times as is needed. Okay,
Could you please repeat it once more?
of course. So
Thank
give me a
you.
second. The one thing I will say on Posaments, some of you are gonna just be like, oh, this is super easy, and others it's gonna seem arcane, but once you once you get a knot, the other knots all of a sudden become super easy. Okay. So here I have my 2 strings. Here's my tails over here. Okay, so here's my loop over here. I'm going to take my bottom string and I'm going to just twist and form a loop. And then I'm going to lay it over. So this part from the top string is just sitting framed by my loop. Then I'm going to take the top string that I have not really done anything with yet. And because it's coming from underneath, it's now going to go over that bottom loop. And the next step would be under. So it's going to go under this end loop over here. And now I'm going to come across back up as on the, like a diagonal. So I'm going to go over one side of the loop, pick up the string that was laying behind it and go under it. And then I will go over the other side of the loop. Okay.
That time I think I got it.
Okay. So this is one of those things of, you know, to test that theory. Well, first of all, if it doesn't fall apart, you got it. But if the most common mistake on this one is if I were to go this way and instead of rotating my loop this way, if I were to inadvertently do my loop this way, what'll happen if I do the rest is that I will go to pull up my knot and it'll fall apart. Okay, so if your knot falls apart, most likely what you probably have done is done your loop in the wrong direction. And that's true with pretty much, yes, Mist, I love you too. So, and if you've got the first one, I highly recommend doing a second knot, okay? Just to make sure that what you're doing, that you've actually got the things in the right placement. So once again, here, I'm going to twist. The tail is going to be on top, and I'm going to have a loop laying over my top thread. And then here, I'm going to pass this one over, and then I'm going to bring it under where the string is changing directions. And I'm going to go over the outer edge of the loop, under the string that was laying behind it, and then over the outer edge of the loop again. And then I'm going to fiddle it tight. So I'm just going to pull a little bit on each section and follow it through. So any part that I want to have tighter, I will just follow it along its passage. Okay. So I'll pull this part a little looser, and now I will pull this tighter, and slowly I will make it tight. On cording, it does, oh, I think it's funny that our cats are communicating. On the 10-trad, I generally tend to do them very tight. You can do them tight with cording, but it doesn't lay quite exactly the same. It's just cording's a good material to practice with. So that's about as tight as I would recommend doing with cording. And you're going to have your own individual differences on how tight you're comfortable pulling them. The looser, slightly loose looks fine. If you pull them too tight, they won't look so good. And they'll have a tendency of rolling. So if I pull it too tight, you'll see how it starts getting all kind of nubbly on the cord. Okay, does anybody need me to go back over that knot? We mostly comfortable on that? I don't want to like change my angle since people can actually see it now. Okay, so, oh, look at that. I love it. Woohoo. So yeah, thanks for everyone show. Oh yeah, looking good.
Erin,
Yeah.
when I made my second loop, it looked like the best way to describe it is I was doing half hitches and it wasn't laying flat. Do you alternate the side that you start your loop on to keep it laying flat?
I don't.
Okay.
If you want to, you can. When you actually start shifting to the 10 trad, there is a little twist, but it's the metal thread. You can literally just kind of twist and smush it down and it'll still lay right. The pieces that I've seen on the extant ones, I have not gotten to examine the actual extant ones. I have to make do with pictures, but the ones that I've seen all appear to go in the same direction. Bear in mind though, that there aren't that many of them, and different people also have like individual, you know, quirks on that. So somebody could have alternated them. Okay, so if you look here, this is one of the pictures of the extant bands, and you can see how this part is still laying the same on each of them. I usually think of this as the figure 8 knot because it reminds me of a figure 8.
Thank you. I see it now. Thank you.
Okay, and then so this is the next one that we're gonna do. This is the one from let's see, grave 944. And this is another one that we start with the string kind of folded in half. Okay. And stuff. But this time, we're actually going to be using the top half first. Okay. And this time, the loop, we need to make sure the tail is under the loop. Okay. So this is the part that'll make a difference on how it holds together. Okay. So in this case, I'm now starting with my top, and I am going to twist it this way. Whoops, sorry, this way. So it's underneath. So the loop part is here and the tail is coming out from under. Okay, so now I'm going to take my bottom half, and I am literally just, you see the part that's sitting behind the loop? I am just going to pass over the outer edge of the loop, under that string, and then come back up. Okay, and now, but I'm not going to cross over the upper half. I'm just going to keep it sitting parallel. Okay. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have one loop, and then I'm going to have another loop sitting on top of it. And actually, I should probably do that this way so you guys can actually probably see it the same direction that I'm used to. So here's our upper. Now it's laying across, and the bottom half of the thread is sitting behind this loop. Okay, So I'm going to take this same thread, the thread I haven't touched yet, and I'm going to, from the top of the loop, I'm going to pass over and just pick up this part of the loop, the part that's sitting underneath the loop. I'm just going to pass the string under it. Okay. And then when I kind of pull it, I'm going to keep going the same direction like the string had been before. So it's still going to stay on the lower side. So it's not going to cross over the other one. Okay. So now here's what I have. I have at the bottom loop, and then I have a little top loop sitting on top of it. And then to keep going, I just literally do the same exact thing. And I usually have to kind of fiddle a little just to make sure that I have my tail going the right direction. So the tail is going to come out from under. And then I'm going to take my bottom, and then I'm going to just pick up that string that's sitting in the center of the loop, which I'm going a little small now. So here it's a little tighter now when you see it. So that's actually what it kind of winds up looking like. Okay, how's that one working out? Oh, hey, look at that.
One more
That was
time,
good.
please.
That's fine. I plan on doing it. Usually I'll do each of them at least 3 times. The beauty about Zoom is I'm not having to run around a table and do it in front of each of you. So we have plenty of time. Okay. So my strings are, my tails are over here. Okay. So my top loop, I am going to rotate this. So this part is under the loop, coming out from the underside of the loop. And then this part that I have not touched, I'm going to go from here and I'm going to pick up the loop. And then I am going to kind of pull it taut so it's not, I don't have a lot of string sitting there, and it's just going to continue in the same direction. So in some respects, it's kind of like I have a loop and then I have another loop sitting on top of it. Okay, so top half of the thread. Oh, about to go the wrong direction. Rotate it. So the tail is going to, when you rotate, the tail is going to be closest to the other string. And then just lay the loop over. And then take up the other string and just pick up that center. And then continue moving in the same direction that you had been prior. Okay. So now you'll have 2 like this. One of the things that I think is hilarious about this particular posament is it will curve. When you make it, it will curve, but you can then sew it on straight. Okay, so hopefully you can actually see that. But it is literally a selection of loops with another string going through each of those loops. Does anybody need me to repeat this again? Or, oh, look at that. Yeah, that looks good. So trying to make sure I see everybody. Oh, okay. Couldn't quite see that. Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah, looking good. Okay. So can everybody, I mean, is everybody still, I know some people were having difficulty seeing me. So if I need to shift either like closer this way or this way, please don't hesitate to say something, okay? And if you are shy about saying it and you need me to go over it, a reminder on chat, you can private message. If you are, like I said, you prefer not to say something directly. Okay. But failing that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next knot. Okay. But even if like one of these doesn't click, a lot of times one of the other knots will click. Oh, I like that. One of the other knots will click, and then all of a sudden that other first knot that didn't make sense will make a lot more sense. Okay. But the next knot I'm going to do, there's multiple ways of doing it. And I usually refer to this one as the triangle knot. I've seen it referred to multiple ways. Okay, so here, this is the knot that we're going to be making, and this is what it's going to ultimately look like. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to show you something. So this is the example that I made from that first knot we went over. Well, this is the triangle. Oh, so this is that first knot that you did, right? This is the triangle knot. They're the same. Okay, but in this case, we're going to do it with just a single thread instead of folding it in half. Okay, so I will probably do this. Let's see. What I actually do when I do these is I will set down one side like a tail, and I'll actually kind of just draw a loop, and then I will just toss my thread over it. So it's laying kind of across the loop. So like this. Okay. And then, oh, and let me go ahead and stop share on here, though it's actually should be the same thing. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the string from the beginning that I first set down. And now because it's coming from under the loop, I'm going to pass it over this section. And then I'm going to pass it. Once again, I'm going to kind of go out as a diagonal, working my way across. So at this point, I'm now going to go under this part, over the string that's sitting on top of the loop, under the far side of the loop, and then across that outer part. And then I'm just going to sit here and fiddle with it to tighten it up. Okay, so my triangular knot looks an awful lot like a pretzel. Let's see if I can do this entirely upside down now. Let's see. Pretty certain that like Ethne has, I think, a tutorial for this one, and she does it slightly different than I do. So when I do these in succession, I actually have to take the knot I already did and work it through. The way she does it, she actually does it backwards from how I do it. So she doesn't have to do that. But this is the way I learned it first, so I don't even think about it. So let's see. So from here, I'm going to lay down my string. I'm going to just roll it down in a loop. So my string is coming from underneath. And then I'm going to take this part and lay it across. Okay. So now I have this loop, the section laying across. And then I'm going to take this part and I'm going to step it over the string I just set down. And then I'm going to work my way back down across the loop. So under the loop, over the string sitting on top of the loop, under the far side of the loop, and then back over that other far side. and then just carefully tighten each of the strings. And when you're tightening, you can see what direction it's moving towards this to give you the thread that you want to actually tighten it all up. So you just look at where the string progresses and stuff. So here I have a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this part a little tighter, and it'll give me a little extra here. And then I'll just move it to the next section. And then I will do that until it reaches the edge where I can kind of pull it tight again. So here's that loop. And now when I do the next one, and like I said, it's probably counterproductive, but this is just how I do it. I got this longer section of string. I'm going to just go ahead and lay out another loop. Lay this part across. Actually, I'm going to move it so it's a little easier. Okay, so then I'm going to lay this part across. I'm literally just going to take this part and cross it over, and I'll actually just pass my knot through. And then sometimes I'll have to rotate it to make sure that they're going the same direction. So now I have two sitting next to each other. Okay. I see a little one. So is that making sense? Okay, let me shift screen so I can actually see other faces. Oh, I like that. I'm not sure what fiber you're using, but it glows on the light when you hold it up to the screen. It looks really pretty. Oh yeah.
Can you do it again? Because I got one in the middle and now I don't know how to do a second one because I'm two in the middle.
Okay, that's fine. Well, guess what? I have two. Okay, so I'm going to leave this part down here. And like I said, there are other ways to do this. And the tutorial on that one, which is just going from a different direction. It's just not instinctive for me. So I'm going to go ahead and make my other loop, pass my thread over. Okay, so here I don't have that much string, so it's going to be a little bit harder to force it through. But I'm still going to pass this thread over. And then what I'll do is I'll still take this, the head of this knot, and I'll still let it lead me where I need to go. And then I'll just force this over each knot in turn. I think I skipped a step. Yep, I did. If you screw it up, it's usually, the nice thing is it's super obvious because it'll look the wrong shape. So I'm going to give myself a little bit more string to make it a little easier to show that. So, and I find that like sometimes I have various different kinds of cord that I take for to my classes. And I have some people who will like try something like rat tail and they're like, oh, this is the worst thing to work with. And then one other person will be like, no, this is the best. So if your fiber is giving you a hassle, don't be afraid to experiment with other practice type cording that might work better for you. Some people like parachute cord, some people don't. The first time I taught this class, I had a box of the various different cording that you use for wrapping paper and stuff. Some of it with wire in it. Some people loved it with the wire in it, and some people hated it. So, but it also does make, you know, possuments are good decorations on Christmas presents. Ask me how I know. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go again. So here, dropping this part here. Now I have a longer string. I'm going to form my loop. Okay, and then I'm going to set this part on top of it. Okay, and then this section, I'm going to go over this section. Okay, under this top of the loop, over the part that's sitting on top of the loop, under this part of the loop, and then over this part. Okay, so here I'm going to go. So this part was under, so this part will be, wait. I'm doing this upside down, so give me a second. Yeah, so over this part, and then it's going to go under this part, over the part that was laying over the loop, under the far side of the loop, and then over the outside. So now I'm just going to work my other knots through it very carefully. Okay, I have too much string here, so I'm not actually able to do that one.
I'm sorry.
Was that to me or just background? So I'm going to take one of these out because otherwise I don't have enough string to do it on this piece. Okay, so from here, I have this one, and then I'm going to lay it down again. Make it bigger so people can see it. Okay, I'm going to just take this part, lay it over this part, and then I'm going to go under this part, over this part, under this part, and then over the far end. Now I'm going to run my knot under here, and then it'll be over that. It'll just follow the same path of that lead string I have. Okay, and now as you can see, I've got two pretzels next to each other. But yeah, if you have too short of a string, I find it really hard to actually continue on these. And what you can do, let's see. So if I go back to handout real quick. So if you notice, this is actually combining the two different ways of doing that knot. Okay, so this is the extant one. I haven't ever seen it. I usually vary how many of these I put in between. All the examples that I've actually seen of pictures of extant ones only have a singleton in between, but this is combining that same knot. Okay, so here, it's not the first knot that we went over, as well as this triangular knot, which are really the same knot. They're just you do them slightly different. Okay, so are we ready to move on, or? Okay. Look, oh, nice. I have to say, I really love how the nice thing of when this is portable and people can go, look, I did it, you know? That's awesome. Okay, so those are the two knots that most of the time when you see Posaments, especially in the SCA, those are the two knots that I usually see most commonly. The other one, the next ones we're going to go over are not quite as common, but when we get to the square one, that's actually my favorite because I absolutely love the square one. And I love it because it's just a little bit weird. But before that, we're going to do this one. And this is literally a bunch of loops that are just held together with a string passing through them. Okay, so going back over here to the handout. So here, the nice thing is this particular piece that is left over is falling apart. And so it makes it a little easier to tell exactly what's happening as opposed to this piece right here. Okay, but literally it's looking, you've got a loop and then this loop and then this loop, and then you've now got this loop and then another loop. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, if I redid my pictures for my handout because some of my older pictures, I didn't have the tails showing, and I found that that was confusing for people. Okay, so for this, let me start initially, let's see. Okay. So from here, I'll stop share. Oh, the key part on here is it needs to be, the tail needs to be passing on the top of the loop here. Okay, not from the under, but from the overside. Okay, so here I'm going to go ahead and just make one loop. And now I'm going to make another loop going in the same direction. Actually, if I don't throw my thread around. Okay, so this tail is laying on top of these loops. And I want to actually make sure I leave a little bit of room because I'm going to be using this tail to string through. Okay, so whatever length of this tail you leave is the length that you can make the posament. So I'm just going to give myself a little bit more space. Okay, so I have these two loops. The bottom of the loop is on the top. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this loop and I'm going to lay it over this other loop. We're just going to overlap them. And now because this one was on top, the next stage, what's the next step? If it was over, what's the next step? Under. So now I'm going to go under this one, over that edge of the second loop, under the edge of the first loop, and then I'm going to then pull it kind of taut. Okay, so now how do I add another loop? I'm just going to shift this one out of the way, make another loop. Okay, once again with this part on the top, And now I'm just going to shift it over to overlap, just because this one I have moved out of the way. And then I'm just going to continue. So I came out from under. So now I'm going to go over this one, under this one. Okay. So now if you see, it's holding my loops together. And don't worry, I'll do this one again. But I think this one usually, most people pick this one up actually fairly fast after the other loops, though it doesn't work that way if I do it first. Okay, so leave my tail. Now I'm going to make my loop. Okay, so in this case, I am actually going to twist toward me. So this part is the tail, is on top. Then I'm just going to make another one. Okay, overlap my loops. And then I'm going to bring this thread under this one, over this one, and then under this one. On this one, when you start doing it with 10 trad, you are going to make it really big and loose, and then you're going to have to keep going back and tightening it. Okay. Because if you try and tighten it prematurely, what happens is you start running into problems getting it through your loops. Okay, so it's just easier to make it big and then just make it tighter. Because, you know, at this point, anything that's loose, oh, okay, I'm just gonna, this part will move here. Now I'm gonna pull this part a little tighter. Oh, now this part goes here, so I'm gonna pull this part tighter. And now here, I'm gonna pull this part tighter. And now I'm pulling, you know, I'm just following the progression along the following the thread, the string through the knot. Okay, so now I can also tweak on this from this end too. Okay, so now I still have those two loops and I have that one string passing above them. Okay, so now if I want to do another one, I just want to make sure that I've got this. But now if you notice, even though it's not, it's still pretty loose, it is harder to get this thread through here and stuff to pick it up. So it's just, I find it's easier to then to go back and tighten. Like if I've done a you know, about 2 inches, I will just tighten the first inch and then I'll keep the part that I'm working with loose. How's everybody doing on this one? Oh, good. Oh, yeah. Any requests for me to do this one again? Yeah, it's because you guys are picking it up now super fast. Okay. So at this point, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay. So, oh, sorry. So that's all that one knot. And I did this one extra pictures just because otherwise sometimes adding that extra loop got confusing for people. Okay, so this is my favorite. I just love the square. In part because this one was, so when I started doing these, I'd been asked about them. I looked at pictures and I went, okay, well, it's a knot. I can, you know, I'm a weaver. I can see that it passes under and it can passes over. So most of these were really straightforward and simple for me. And then I saw this one and then I'm like, what in the heck did they do here? Because you're going to wind up skipping that over under for one part, and then you're going to come in and back and fill it in. Okay. So I just absolutely love this knot. So this one, I am going to, and so. Trying to do this backwards is messing my head up. Okay, so here, we're upside down anyway, it's not backwards. So I'm going to leave, this is my tail, and I'm just gonna draw myself a loop. And then what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna take my working thread or my long tail, and I'm just gonna
Please
pass
stop
it.
screen sharing.
Oh, sorry. Okay, can you see me again?
Yes.
Okay, let me start that over. Thank you for pointing that out. So here, I'm just gonna draw my loop. And then I'm gonna take this one and I'm just gonna go through this loop. So I'm really just kind of tying a knot, but I'm leaving a very nice loose knot. Okay, but it's still going. This one was under, now it's over, and now it's, or sorry, this one it's over, now it's under, now it's over. So normally at this point you would go, you would think the next step would be under, but we're gonna skip that step. We're gonna skip this part, and now we're gonna just go over again. So we're actually following the same path that this one just took. So this one's gonna go over, this one's gonna go under, and then you're gonna pass over this other section of the band, but I'm gonna leave this loop sitting here, okay? Because if I were to pull it, it'd just come apart. And now what I'm gonna do is, this was over, so now I'm gonna come up through the center this way. And I'm gonna go under this one, and I'm filling in that blank spot, over this one, under this one, and then over this one. And now if I were to pick it up, it won't fall apart. It's going to look like an amorphous blob at this point, okay? But when you sit there and fiddle with the strings, you'll be able to turn it into a square. Okay, so it's starting to look much more square-like. And then if I just keep tightening it, okay, and it eventually, as I tighten it, it'll become much more apparent that it's a square. A lot of times before then, it'll look kind of it'll look kind of semi-round. Okay, and if I keep going enough, it will actually look like, let's see, like this, like these. Okay.
Can we start that one from 0.0 again?
No, that's fine. I'll go over it again. I just like this one because this one was a challenge for me to figure out. Okay. But I just like that you got to come back in and fill in a step. It's just different. It makes it entertaining for me. Okay. So leave my tail, draw a loop. Okay. And then I've got my stuff, all my other threads over here. So I'm going to just, since this part of the loop is over, so my tail is under, and this part of the loop is over. So because this one's over, I'm going to take this part and go under this part. So I'm going to go under the loop on the close side, and then over the loop on the far side. Okay, so I'm literally getting kind of, if you turn it sideways, I'm just getting a pretzel. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to skip a step. So rather than going, so I just came over, I'm going to go over again instead of going under. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go over this one. I'm going to go under this part in the center, and then over the far edge of the pretzel. Okay, and I want to make sure I leave this loop sitting here. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be over this string. Okay, so here's the part that's still a loop. So if I were to pick it up at this point, it would completely fall apart because it's not alternating over, under, over, under. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and fill in this missing step. So now I've still got my working string and it just came over. So I am now going to pick up and I'm going to come in and bring it in. So it's going to sit in between this when I'm done. So from here, I'm going to go under this part, over the one in the center, under the next one. And now I'm going to go over that loop that I had left sitting there. And that's going to close that loop. Okay. So here's my kind of loose amorphous looking square. And then I will just, like I said, I will fiddle with it until where's my other string going? Okay, so like that. Oh, good job. Okay. So, and I don't mind repeating this one because, oh yeah, look at those. You got two going there. Yeah, these are looking great. See, I tell you it's complicated and then you're like, oh, watch me, I got this. So the cool thing about this knot is that, you know, that part where you skipped the step, you can do the same thing and make bigger squares. Okay, you're just going to continue skipping that step and filling in the blanks. And that's how you can make some of these other ones show up too. And if you want, we can go over that. So does anybody need me to repeat the square? I don't mind. Like I said, it's my favorite.
Yes, please.
How do
Okay.
you do a knot and the next one? Which cord do you start looping to make another one?
Oh, hang on. So from here, hang on, like build back in here. Okay, so I have this one. I can then just leave my tail over here was my starting point. Let me actually make it to where I have enough working thread and I'll keep going on my knot for the second one. Okay. Okay, so successfully moved my square. So it's a little bit amorphous now, but so I have my square. My square is just going to sit here. And now I'm going to go ahead and do my loop. Hang on, I think I'm slightly shifted this. Is that everybody can see that now? Okay, so I'll make my loop and then I'm going to come in at the working thread is going to be over. Now I'm going to come back from underneath over here and I'm going to leave. So I've got my pretzel and now I'm going to work my way back. Actually, I'm going to tighten it and make it a lot smaller so I have enough string. So now I have a much smaller pretzel, which hopefully you guys can still see. So still have my pretzel. And now I'm going to skip my step and I'm going to go back under or over this edge of the loop, under the string in the center, and then out the other side. So I'm going to have this part still just kind of not connected to anything. Okay, and then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this thread and I'm going to go under that edge of the loop, the one I just crossed over, and I'm going to bring it back up the center of that loop. So I'll do under this one, over this one, under this one, and then now that this one will sit right over that loop that was kind of floppy before. So now I have two next to each other. Is this making sense?
I just need to tighten mine up.
I will
but
not be
there
at
we
all
go.
offended if you.
I've got two.
Wait, what?
I have two. I just need to tighten that one up.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, this one needs a lot more tightening than some of the other ones. Oh, yeah. So, okay, so I can go over more of these again, any of the knots that anybody wants me to. But before that, I want to go over some real other basic stuff that often comes up. So, thankfully, I'm the only one I know of who's done this. But this is my cautionary tale of don't be me. Okay, so Tentrad does not conduct electricity well. Ask me how I know. So this was literally just my measuring it out, because when I get it on spools, and I just usually measure it like based off arm length. I don't usually plan out the length of my bands, other than I kind of can eyeball it. This actually touched the surge protector, and it arced. So it exploded, and it just gives you a pinpoint burn, but the adrenaline rush kind of sucked. So don't do that, or at least be aware of where the electrical outlets are when you're playing with metal thread. Because I've played with a lot of metal thread and I never had that happen before. Okay, so one of the common things that I usually get asked is, how do you determine how much Tentrad to use? Okay, so going back to the handout real quick. So here at the end of the handout, I do have, oh, this is another piece of housekeeping, but I'll get to that in a minute. So if you go to Ethne's site, she actually also has a calculator, which actually, let me go ahead and stop share on this, because she shared it with me earlier on when we were chatting on Facebook. She has a calculator that you can use to estimate how much you would need. Okay, let me pull it up real quick. Okay. But I want to make sure I post that link in. It's on that same site, but this is the specific part where she has a calculator. Okay. Okay. I will use very, very long lengths. But at the same time, I've also done junctures, because sometimes you'll wind up with a lot, like a chunk of Tentrad that's just not quite long enough. What I actually do is I will take, so if I have, like here, I have one part that's a little short, I will take this thread and I will fold it behind the knot, and I will just take another thread, another piece of Tentrad, and I will thread it through one of the back loops that you can't see. And I'll just take a little piece of like Elmer's glue or something, and I will glue it in place. And then when it's dry, I can keep going. And it's going to be from the surface, there it will be like there is no interruption in my knots. Okay, so if you miscalculate, you can add on to your pieces, but you want to also stagger it so you don't wind up with predictable lumps in one spot. Okay, but yeah, so I don't think I have any that I've done that with here. Otherwise, you can just make another piece and sew it next to the other piece. Okay, depending on what you're using it for and how much you actually care about that. So when I put the link to her Ethne's estimator into the chat. If you want to know exactly how much, because everybody's going to be a little bit different on how tight they pull their knots. Okay, so similar to how you can figure out by wrapping string around a ruler if you're prepping for a weaving project, if you make an inch worth of a particular posament, measure it. Okay, well, actually, use a piece of, basically not waste 10 trad, but a piece of 10 trad and stuff. Measure the length that you have. Make 1 inch worth of knots or 1 knot, and measure how much your take up is. Okay, because you can then calculate it out exactly what your takeout would be for the desired length that you have. So you can use a smaller piece of 10 trad, and that's actually one of the things that I do for like for my classes. So I had a small leftover piece of 10 trad. I just used it to do 3 square knots. This is actually, I use these for my classes. So I can pass it around. And so here's a small sample. But I can then measure how much string I lost for this 1 inch of Posaments. And now if I know that it took me this much string to make 1 inch, and I want to make a 10-inch long Posament, I just need to add, I need to multiply it out to make it give me enough for 10. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, you can plan out projects. I'm honestly, I'm horrible in some respects on that, because like I say, this is kind of my entertainment at events. I walk around when I'm not using it. I hang it from my festoons. Yes, Ethne's awesome. Yes, actually it is a knotting splotch. But it's also, like I said, they're useful to have around. Especially if somebody is like, oh, hey, you know, what does that knot look like that you're showing me in class? Oh, here's what it actually looks like. But you can plan out projects, and you don't have to necessarily have like trailing strings down to the ground, though I'm lazy and I tend to do that. But it's just like anything else. If you have a very long string, you are a little bit more likely to get tangles. The nice thing is the 10 trad doesn't really care as much. It's not like, you know, you're sitting there and doing embroidery and you have a very, very long string and you're going to get more knots, or similar to when you do it with nail binding. But I'll tell you, I'm also lazy there, and my strings are always overly long, and I'm just as bad about it with embroidery too. So find what length works for you. Understand that you can add another chunk on if you need to. Or you can just take, like I said, if you look at the back of any of these, this is the one I usually wind up doing it on. Just because this is my, like, I can do this, not my sleep type of thing. But if you look at the back of these, you can actually see that you have loops. If I pass a new thread through it, and I just take the other thread that was continuing and I just fold it to the back, like I said, they'll actually hold together without even glue. I just prefer, if I'm going to give it to somebody else, to glue it just in case. And if you're doing it for yourself, you don't need to glue it, because when you sew it down, it's not going anywhere. Okay, but it's also hidden. I also get asked a lot of how to finish the ends. I literally just tuck them behind the band. Okay, tuck them behind the Posament. Sometimes what I will do, okay, where's my, yeah. So something like this, I will finish my edge here, and you see how this side has kind of that curve. I'm sorry, pull the in front of there. It has that kind of curve from the beginning. And now my side over here looks like this because I've got 2 strands. What I will do is the part that's already on the back side, I will literally just fold it down so it's out of the way. Okay. And then I'll take this part and I will actually turn it into a loop. And I'll also allow it to sit behind. And then once I sew it down, it will look the same as my beginning edge. Okay. But because most of these you are going to see sewn down, there's a lot a lot of it is forgiving. How do I add? I actually basically kind of do the same thing. I will fold that string out of the way, and I can take just even, because the tentrad is stiff, so you don't usually need a needle. But if you have a problem like getting it through a tight loop, take a needle and just loosen, work that area so you make a small channel for you to pass your tentrad through. Okay, and then when you just grab and kind of squish it together, it'll hold it in place. Okay, and then on the handout, if you notice, where's, oh, that's, and there we are. Okay, so here, if you see this picture, this is actually me sewing it down. They didn't really care about where they sewed it down. Okay, if you look at the extant bands, if the ones that you can see that are sewn, oh, I don't think I have any that you can actually see the stitches on. But they're basically, well, this one you can see right here and stuff, but that might actually just be a string. I don't think I can, if I make this larger, you might, okay, you really can't see the stitches there, but this looks like that's actually a stitch and stuff, and that's right in the middle. It's just nice and visible. Okay, so they didn't generally do the worry about that type of aesthetic. However, most of us have a much more modern aesthetic, and we don't generally want to just tack it down, or we want our stitches hidden. So if you want to hide your stitches, if I do my stitch to hold it down at one of these junctures, when I pull it tight, it will pull right under the loop and the stitch will hide. Okay, so then you don't have to have any of those stitches showing. It's just magically attached to your fabric. Okay. So any other questions? Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. But then if you do have further questions, or you just want to geek about whatever, please feel free. Okay.
Can you
Erin, I
show us,
have a question.
Oh, okay.
can you show us how to make the bigger squares?
Yeah, I can do that.
And I have a question too. I came in late, but on the handout, is there a resource for where to get the metal?
Yeah, I actually mentioned, I believe, Ethne, you carry it in your shop still on Etsy, right? Okay, so on the bottom of the handout, I have 2 sites that I know of that carry it.
Okay.
One is in the United States, so you don't have to worry about shipping from Sweden. And she's actually in this call. She's let's see, so she has a resource. She actually also sells Posaments too. If you are interested in having a Posament somebody else made. So of course you're all going to be fantastic at this, and you're just going to make everybody else envious of your Posaments, so they'll buy them from her too. Okay.
Great kit.
Huh?
Like, she sells a really great starter kit.
Yeah, she sells a starter kit as well as a small handout on them as well. So she's a fan. Well, and I happen to know that she's gotten to see the Posaments in person, and I'm insanely jealous. And that as her children finally allow her to have more time, I know she has big plans for sharing even more research than she already has.
I have a book about halfway done that will cover all of them in excruciating detail and some history and everything. Kind of for the materials, if you're looking for a starter kit or a moderate amount, getting it through my site is reasonably. I'm not looking to make any money. It's completely a hobby business. If you're looking like Alderson to have yards and yards and yards, then it's more cost effective to order it directly from Sweden. But you know, if you want 20 meters, by the time you put in the international shipping, it's probably cheaper just to get it through my store. And if you want weird colors, sizes, lengths, whatever, you can contact me. And if I'm going to do an order soon, I can often help you do that.
I missed the company name on Etsy.
It's the Excellent Frog.
Ah, good. Found that. Thank you.
Yeah. I get mine, like I said, from Sweden, but I get big spools of it. In part because if you buy it in bulk, you get it a little bit cheaper. The longer pieces, you get a little bit less. And for me, it winds up cost effective. But one of the reasons I mentioned that she's in the United States. So the shipping, it doesn't wind up nearly as bad, you know, because she's already basically built the shipping, you know, in, because she's already gotten it in that bulk and then can do it into smaller pieces, so it doesn't actually wind up exorbitant.
Yeah, I end up usually buying about somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 meters every time I order. So.
Yeah. The only extant ones that I know of are gold or silver. But if you go to like some of the sites that's in like Sweden that sell tentrad, because it's still used there for like Sammy bracelets and stuff like that. So it is commonly, you can find it in various different places online in Sweden. I like Pewter of Sweden just because that's the first place I found, and they always get it to me fast, and I never have any problems, and they have a decent discount if I buy it in bulk. They also have other oddball colors. They have like copper. They also have it, most of the time I use 0.3 because that's easy to find, and it's, I mean, as far as I know, I think it's pretty comparable with most of the extant ones, but I think some of there's some variety in those in the sizes on those too. Though Ethne would know that a lot better than I would. But
I've got a chart for that.
Like I said, she's got lots of really cool resources on her site.
If anyone's interested, that there's the Postament reconstruction page has a chart, so you can kind of see what those different sizes were.
Yeah, and I will be adding on the wire ones to my class. Most of the wire ones are actually more braids rather than knots, but they still follow the same over under principle. Okay, but you can also, like, a standard 3-strand braid is actually appropriate for a posament. We do have examples of those. So when people go, oh, that's not period, you can laugh at them. Okay, or just send them my way. I'm a big fan of trying to tell people saying turquoise isn't period. The color turquoise or teal is not period. And I'm like, hey, I dyed this with load, you know. I see a hand.
Yes, I have a question. I'm looking at the starter kit on our thing, and they have those little knitting bobbly things.
Oh, bobbins?
Yeah, that you use for when you're like, doing thread changes for stuff. What are those used for this? Why would you
be able to use longer threads. So I can have, instead of my standing around and I have like super yards of thread to have to pull through my loop, I can just pass the bobbin through, and it's fairly quick and easy.
Okay. Thank you.
To be honest, I'm lazy. Okay. And I'm really good at untangling string. String and I get along. So I tend to skip a lot of those types of steps. But at the same time, that's very useful. When I do my braided wire, I roll it and clip it so I can do my like very long braids. I do that when I do like my braids for apron seams as well. But by the time I get the tentrad rolled onto the bobbin, I would have been done with it just because I'm pretty fast. I usually, if I take tentrad with me to an event, I can finish, if I'm not rushing, I can easily finish 2 in a day. Just walking around, talking to people, standing around during court, or watching the fighting. I have not had it tarnish at all. If you look at the various different sites, they vary in quantity of silver versus pewter. To be honest, I do when I use them for donations, for like various different auctions to support causes, I will use the higher quality just because to increase the sale value for whatever cause that I'm trying to support. But I have not noticed a difference at all in the various different silver content in terms of how shiny it really looks. And I've never had any of it tarnish.
Which
But I haven't
link-
had my pure silver thread when I do brocade tarnish either. So
Which links do you use for prizes or donations?
usually that's in various non-SCA auctions to support
Okay.
SCA people.
Mhm.
So sometimes that's if somebody had a tragedy and people are running an auction to try and raise funds to, you know, replace a house burning down, things like that, or to support medical bills for people who are, you know, got cancer or something of that
No,
nature.
how long of a piece do you
Oh,
make?
for most of the times that I do those, most of the people who I give them to and make them for, I usually give them to them to use as apron fronts.
Okay.
Even though example wise, we actually probably have more examples from what was probably male garb, but you're more likely to see them on female garb in the SCA. I haven't convinced enough men to start putting them on their garb. I'm working on it. But I usually tend to make lengths like about this wide. So varying from somewhere between 6 to 10 inches, because most of the time I use them as most of the women I give them to use them as decoration on the top of an apron. Okay, any other questions? I actually do still have the recording going. And then people wanted me to do one of the big squares. So, okay, because we're still actually fairly close to time. So give myself actually plenty of string this time. The examples that I did for the class, I actually cut down to smaller pieces of string, just so it would be easy to see the ends in the pictures. Okay. Some of this I'm probably not going to do upside down. So I will try and periodically move it. Oh, actually, it didn't work out better that way. I just need to tilt down. I'd actually chosen this little tray because it does tilt. But so here, I am going to leave my tail here, and I'm going to come out here. And I'm not going to drop it on the floor, or at least I'm going to pretend I didn't. Okay, so I've got my tail here. I've got this part here. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so I have space to fill it in. Okay, so now I am going to go here. Okay, so I have my pretzel. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and go back down, skipping that step. And then make sure I leave that loop still sitting over here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just keep repeating that step for as long as I want to. Okay, so now I'm going to come back over here, and I'm trying to actually move as close to this section as I can because I'm going to keep doing the same step and I'm going to keep filling in the blanks, you know, or I'm just going to leave a bunch of blanks and eventually fill it in. So from here, I am going to go ahead and go under.
So when you're doing a bigger square, you're working from the outside in.
Yep. But I'm doing the exact same thing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, and now I'm going to go ahead and once again, I'm going to leave my loop. Oops. Actually, hang on. So I'm under that one, over that one, under this one. And then now I have a loop, but if you notice, as I pull it tight, now this is kind of the outer edge now, where the original loop that I left, now that's
Right.
kind of the outer edge. So now I'm going to leave a loop over that one. Okay. And then I'm going to follow the same path back as this most recent one. Okay. Because it's actually not following the exact same path as the first time because you've added this other layer. So then I'm going to go over this one, under this one. And then when I, whoops, they're also a little bit more fiddly. Okay. So now when I get to this outer edge, I'm going to go ahead and leave a little bit more space between. And I'm going to go, I ended going over. So I'm going to go ahead and go under here. And now I'm going to, once again, I'm going to work my way back up. Now you see why I gave myself so much string. Okay, so I went under this one, over this one, under, over, and then now I'm going to go under this one that was originally a loop. And now that last loop I left, I'm going to leave a loop over it. Is this making sense?
Yes.
So I'm just continuing the process. And actually I would have to tighten this up. So now I'm going to, once again, I'm going to leave this loop. And I'm going to keep doing that until I fill in my desired length for the you know, center. So in order to continue this, you can kind of see how I'm building it in.
Right. So let's say you're now happy with the size. How do you tighten it?
Well,
how do you end it?
So at this point, what I need to do is I need to actually get enough of my string over here so I can, okay, I can probably force this. So from here, I have my tail. I'm going to go ahead and now I'm going to fill in this inner channel. So now
just
I've
over,
got,
over, under the whole way.
Yes. And so I ended on an over. So I'm going to go under. Now I'm going to go over this one, under this one, over this one, under this one, over this one, under this one, and then over that loop. And now I'm going to sit here and fiddle with it because I had to pull it kind of out of shape in order to make it
right.
To force it to do what I wanted it to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
now, oops.
While you fiddle with it, I'm going to say thank you because I actually understood that.
Perfect.
Whether I can duplicate it or not is a whole different question.
If you are having problems with a posament, I highly recommend laying it out on the table. You will probably get lazy like me and will like carrying them around at events. So you wind up kind of doing them in the air, but I wouldn't do one of these ones in the air.
Right.
Because I would wind up inventing new cuss words and people would probably prefer I don't do that at events. Okay, so, but yeah, literally that's all I'm doing is I'm fiddling with it. And there's actually quite a few examples of different sized squares.
Right.
I've mentioned Ethne's spreadsheet before. She actually has links to the specific pictures and then quite a few details on them, such as if they were made with metal thread or if they were made with wire. You know, so I would, like I said, I highly, if you are interested in this, especially if you are interested in, like, if you ever want to do this as an A&S project, I highly recommend that you look at her site. Don't forget to cite her. I'm in academia. I feel very strongly about that. And as you notice, this is starting to actually come together. But yeah, the squares, I like them, but they're fiddly.
Okay. Grazie.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if I should bother trying to finish this before stopping the recording or not, but most people can probably actually see what I've got going on here. So I have my square and it is starting to come together. But I've got a lot more fiddling to go ahead and actually make it fit into the same size square that I would normally. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. But yeah, if anybody wants to, like I said, hang out, I'll keep twitching. I'll keep fiddling with this. But I always like to make sure that I have at least a little time off the recording for any other questions that people might have, or if they just want to show off what they made.
Thank you, Erin.